Hand over your keycard. You're suspended without pay until you apologize to your brother. My mother sneered across the boardroom table, while Gavin smirked from his leather armchair. I didn't argue, yell, or shed a single tear. I simply placed my security badge onto the polished mahogany wood and murmured, "All right." The next morning, my mother walked into my corner suite, expecting me to beg for forgiveness, only to find an empty desk, a single resignation letter, and our lead corporate attorney running through the double doors, pale as death, screaming, "Tell me you didn't file it yet!" My name is Laura Poole. To understand why a single suspension order caused the immediate structural collapse of a multi-million-dollar enterprise, you have to understand the toxic inner workings of Poole's structural technologies. Based in the heart of Denver, Colorado, our firm was founded 30 years ago by my late father, Arthur Poole. Dad was a visionary civil engineer who built the business on uncompromising integrity, technical precision, and absolute commitment to structural safety. However, when my father passed away 6 years ago, control of the company fell into the hands of my mother, Victoria Poole. Victoria possessed zero engineering background, zero technical qualifications, and a total blind spot when it came to her favorite child, my younger brother Gavin. While I spent 8 years grinding through rigorous dual master's degrees in structural engineering and corporate law at Stanford University, Gavin spent his early 20s dropping out of business programs, collecting luxury sports cars, and expecting the family empire to fund his lavish lifestyle. I returned to Denver to preserve my father's legacy, taking on the role of Chief Principal Engineer and Senior Vice President of Technical Operations. For 6 exhausting years, I worked 80 hours a week. I personally calculated stress loads for skyscraper foundations, secured state environmental clearances, and authored the proprietary patents for our firm's flagship innovation, a revolutionary seismic stabilization alloy known as the Poole Matrix. I was the intellectual engine, the technical anchor, and the sole legal license holder that allowed Poole Structural Technologies to legally bid on government contracts. Yet, despite my endless sacrifices, Victoria treated me like a glorified employee who owed her eternal debt. My annual salary was kept capped at a modest $80,000, while Gavin was handed the title of Executive Director of Operations, a meaningless position that came with a $300,000 salary, an unlimited corporate expense account, and a brand new Italian sports car. Gavin's incompetence was legendary across the Denver construction sector. He routinely missed critical regulatory deadlines, showed up to client dinners intoxicated, and tried to delegate his basic administrative tasks to junior project managers. Whenever I brought up Gavin's blatant negligence or warned Victoria that his lavish spending was draining our cash reserves, my mother would slam her hands onto her desk and accuse me of jealousy. "Gavin has the charisma and social grace that this firm needs," Victoria would snap at me. "You're just a cold technician, Laura. You sit in your lab with your equations while your brother builds real relationships. Know your place and stop picking on him." The breaking point arrived 2 months ago during the bid execution for the Denver High-Speed Transit Terminal, a $75 million municipal infrastructure project that represented the largest contract in our company's history. As chief principal engineer, I had spent 14 months designing the terminal's subterranean support architecture, ensuring every pillar utilized our patented seismic alloy to meet strict federal safety guidelines. 3 weeks before ground was scheduled to break, Gavin decided he wanted to secure a massive quarterly performance bonus to purchase a private yacht. Without consulting me or the engineering team, Gavin secretly altered the raw material procurement orders. He bypassed our vetted steel vendors and purchased substandard, uncertified industrial concrete from an offshore shell company owned by one of his drinking buddies, pocketing $400,000 in kickbacks under the guise of cost optimization.
I discovered the discrepancy during a routine quality audit of the site materials. When I ran stress tests on the imported concrete samples, the results were horrific. The material crumbled at 30% below federal minimum safety thresholds. Had those pillars been poured, the transit terminal roof would have collapsed within 2 years, potentially killing hundreds of commuters. I immediately issued a formal engineering freeze on the project site, halting all construction equipment and notifying the Municipal Project Oversight Committee that the materials failed safety compliance. When Gavin found out that I had frozen the site, he blew a fuse. He stormed into the executive suite, screaming at the top of his lungs, slamming doors, and claiming I was deliberately trying to destroy his career out of personal spite. Victoria instantly called an emergency board meeting, flanked by 3 spineless board members who owed their positions to her. "How dare you sabotage your brother's project?" Victoria yelled, her face red with rage as she stood at the head of the boardroom table. "Gavin saved this company $400,000 on raw materials. You are just bitter that he showed more financial initiative than you." "Mom, those materials are illegal," I stated calmly, placing the certified lab report on the table. "If we pour that concrete, the terminal foundation will crack under load, people will die, and this firm will face federal criminal prosecution." Gavin rolled his eyes, smirking arrogantly from his leather chair. "Oh, stop being so dramatic, Laura. It's just a minor tolerance variance. You're just jealous because Mom gave me the lead on the transit deal instead of you." "I don't care about your ego, Gavin," I replied, looking him dead in the eye. "I care about structural integrity. As long as my engineering seal is on those blueprints, that uncertified concrete will never touch the ground." Victoria slapped her hand against the mahogany table so hard her diamond rings clanked. "Enough," she shouted. "I am the chief executive officer of this company, Laura. You do not dictate policy to me or your brother. You will lift that engineering freeze immediately, and you will apologize to Gavin right now for publicly disrespecting his authority." "I will not lift a safety freeze that protects human lives," I said quietly, "and I certainly will not apologize for doing my job." Victoria leaned across the table, her eyes filled with cold, vindictive malice. "Then you leave me no choice. Hand over your keycard. You are suspended without pay, effective immediately, until you grow up, swallow your pride, and apologize to your brother."
The room went deathly silent. Gavin leaned back, folding his arms with a smug, triumphant grin on his face. I looked at my mother. I looked at my brother. I felt no anger, no panic, and no desire to fight. A serene, crystal-clear realization washed over my soul. My father's company was already dead, killed by the greed of a foolish mother and a spoiled brother. I slowly reached into my blazer pocket, unclipped my master security badge, and set it gently on the table. "All right," I whispered. I stood up, adjusted my jacket, and walked out of the boardroom without looking back. That night, between the hours of 11 o'clock and 4 in the morning, while Victoria and Gavin were out celebrating at an upscale steakhouse, I executed a quiet, flawless exit strategy. I returned to the building using my emergency master facilities key, which Victoria had forgotten to revoke, and packed 7 years of my life into 4 cardboard boxes. I took my personal research notebooks, my original patent documentation, my professional awards, and my framed engineering licenses. Then I sat down at my desk and drafted 2 official documents. The first was my formal letter of immediate resignation from Pool Structural Technologies. The second document was far more devastating. Under Colorado State Engineering Code, a structural firm cannot operate or hold active municipal building permits unless a licensed master engineer of record is actively employed to supervise site safety. Furthermore, my contract with the company contained a specific clause. All 3 international patents for the pool matrix seismic alloy were owned personally by me and licensed to the company on a conditional, non-exclusive basis that terminated immediately upon my departure. At 2 in the morning,
I logged into the Colorado State Licensing Board portal and submitted my formal notice of Master Seal revocation. With 3 clicks, I officially disassociated my professional license from Pool Structural Technologies. I then forwarded the certified lab reports regarding Gavin's illegal concrete substitution directly to the Federal Highway Administration and the Municipal Infrastructure Bureau. By 4 in the morning, my office was completely stripped clean. I placed my resignation letter in a crisp white envelope, set it in the exact center of my bare glass desk, locked the door, and walked out into the cool Denver night air, free forever. At 8 o'clock the next morning, Victoria arrived at the corporate headquarters, walking down the marble hallway with an arrogant bounce in her step. Gavin walked beside her, sipping an iced latte, boasting about how he was going to take over my engineering team. Victoria was convinced that 12 hours of suspension without pay would have broken my spirit, expecting me to be waiting outside her office on my knees, ready to apologize to Gavin. Victoria pushed open the double glass doors to my 28th floor executive suite, a patronizing smirk playing across her lips. "Well, Lara, I hope you've come to your senses." Her voice cut off instantly. Victoria stopped dead in her tracks, her coffee mug slipping from her fingers and shattering onto the floor, spilling dark liquid across the white carpet. The office was completely hollowed out. The walls were bare, the computer monitors were unplugged, the bookcases were stripped clean. The only object remaining in the entire 300-square-foot room was a single white envelope resting on the pristine glass desk. What is this?" Gavin stammered, stepping into the empty room, looking around in utter confusion. "Where is all her stuff?" Victoria rushed to the desk with trembling hands, snatching up the envelope and tearing it open. As her eyes scanned my concise 2-paragraph resignation letter, her face drained of every drop of color. Before she could speak, the heavy suite doors were thrown open with a violent bang. Franklin Vance, our firm's chief corporate legal counsel, ran into the room drenched in cold sweat, his tie askew, holding a massive stack of red-stamped legal notices. His face was as pale as a bedsheet, his eyes wide with absolute panic. "Victoria," Franklin gasped, catching his breath as he gripped the doorframe. "Tell me you didn't file it yet. Tell me she didn't actually leave." Victoria stared at the lawyer, her voice trembling violently. "Franklin, what are you talking about? She left a resignation letter. What does this mean?" "It means we are completely ruined," Franklin screamed, throwing the stock of papers onto the glass desk. Lara logged into the state board portal at 2 this morning. She formally revoked her master engineering seal from our corporate registration. Gavin scoffed, folding his arms arrogantly. "So what? She's just a staff engineer. We'll just hire another one by Friday." "You complete idiot," Franklin yelled, turning on Gavin with utter fury. Lara wasn't just a staff engineer. She was our only registered master engineer of record. Under state law, without a master seal, our corporate operational license is automatically suspended effective 6 o'clock this morning. Victoria gasped, her hand flying to her throat. "Suspended? It gets 10 times worse," Franklin shouted, his voice cracking with hysteria. Because her license was revoked, the Municipal Infrastructure Bureau has issued an immediate cease and desist on all 12 of our active construction sites across Colorado. Work on the $75 million transit terminal has been halted by federal marshals. Gavin dropped his latte, his face turning an ash-gray color. "Halted? But the concrete pour was scheduled for 9 a.m. today." "There is no concrete pour." Lara submitted certified laboratory test reports to the Federal Transportation Inspector General, proving that you ordered fraudulent, uncertified concrete. Federal agents are currently raiding our procurement department with a criminal search warrant. Victoria fell backward into a chair, her chest heaving as tears of sheer terror welled in her eyes. No, Franklin! Tell her to withdraw the reports. Call her right now. "I can't call her," Franklin cried out in despair. "Her personal legal counsel just served me with a formal cease and desist notice." Furthermore, because Laura owns the personal patents for the pool matrix seismic alloy, she has officially revoked our licensing rights. We can't even touch her technology without facing multi-million-dollar patent infringement lawsuits. Before Victoria could respond, her desk phone began ringing uncontrollably. Seconds later, the assistant ran in, shouting that the bank had just frozen our $20 million revolving credit line, and our primary investors were demanding immediate loan acceleration. Panicked, frantic, and facing complete bankruptcy, Victoria and Gavin piled into their car and raced across Denver to my private residence, begging to speak with me. But I wasn't there. While they were busy throwing tantrums in an empty office, I had already finalized the setup of my new independent firm, Vanguard Structural Dynamics. 2 weeks prior, anticipating Victoria's foolishness, I had secured private venture funding from Denver's top commercial real estate developers who knew that I was the true brain behind the Pool name. The moment news broke that I had left Pool Structural Technologies, every single major client, subcontractor, and senior engineer fled my mother's dying company to join my new firm. 3 days after my resignation, Victoria and Gavin managed to track me down to the grand opening of my new corporate headquarters in downtown Denver. They burst into my glass-walled reception lobby, looking utterly disheveled, defeated, and broken. Victoria's makeup was smudged, her hair unkempt, while Gavin looked like he hadn't slept in 72 hours. "Laura, please," Victoria wailed, bursting into hysterical tears as she rushed toward me, trying to grab my hands. "You have to come back. The bank is liquidating our accounts. The state is pulling our corporate charter. Your brother is facing federal fraud charges." I stood behind my sleek white marble reception desk, immaculate in a tailored dark blue suit, looking at my mother with calm, undisturbed composure. "I warned you about the concrete, Mom," I said softly. "I told you it was illegal. You told me to swallow my pride and apologize." Gavin dropped onto his knees right on the tile floor, sobbing openly, clutching his face in his hands. "Laura, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I was greedy. Please, tell the federal inspectors it was a technical misunderstanding. Save our family name." I looked down at my brother, my gaze cold, distant, and completely unyielding. "You didn't care about the family name when you compromised public safety for a luxury yacht, Gavin," I stated with absolute clarity. "And you didn't care about me when you smirked while Mom suspended me." Victoria wrung her hands in pathetic desperation, her voice cracking. "Laura, I'm your mother. How can you be so heartless? Where is your loyalty to your family?" A subtle, serene smile touched my lips. "My loyalty was to my father's legacy of integrity," I replied softly. "You destroyed that legacy to enable a foolish boy. Now you get to live with the consequences of your choices." I motioned to the 2 private security guards standing near the entrance. "Security, please escort these trespassers out of my building." The guards stepped forward, firmly taking Victoria and Gavin by their arms, guiding them toward the double glass doors. Victoria's hysterical weeping and Gavin's desperate begging echoed off the high marble ceilings until the doors shut, leaving my office in absolute, glorious silence. The legal and financial destruction of Pool Structural Technologies was total and permanent. Within 45 days, the company declared catastrophic Chapter 7 bankruptcy. All corporate assets, equipment, and office properties were auctioned off on the courthouse steps to satisfy millions of dollars in defaulted bank debt and municipal breach of contract penalties. Victoria lost the family mansion in Aspen, her personal savings accounts were seized by creditors, and she was forced to move into a tiny, subsidized apartment on the outskirts of the city, living on a meager fixed pension. Gavin faced full federal prosecution for safety falsification and corporate fraud. To avoid state prison time, he entered a strict plea agreement that stripped him of his executive credentials, ordering him to pay $300,000 in restitution while serving 4 years of federal probation and performing 1,500 hours of mandatory public community service. Meanwhile, Vanguard's structural dynamics exploded into an industry leader. My firm secured the revised $75 million Denver high-speed transit terminal contract, re-engineering the subterranean infrastructure with total safety and transparency. Within 3 years, my firm expanded across 4 states, generating over $100 million in annual municipal contracts. I established the Arthur Poole Engineering Foundation, a $20 million philanthropic trust that provides full university scholarships, mentorship programs, and research grants for brilliant young women pursuing careers in structural engineering and ethical technology.
Sitting in my top-floor office, watching the sunset cast a golden glow across the snow-capped Rocky Mountains, holding my head high with absolute peace, I knew that true authority isn't given by toxic title holders. It is earned through competence, protected by integrity, and proven when you walk away into your own light. Educational lesson. This story highlights a vital lesson regarding corporate compliance, technical authority, and the danger of weaponized familial authority in business. When toxic leaders rely on performative power while ignoring regulatory compliance, they create a fragile structure destined for immediate collapse. In technical fields, authority does not belong to the person holding the executive title or the family surname. It belongs to the licensed professional whose signature and expertise legally validate the operation. When enabling parents suspend or punish competent professionals to shield an irresponsible child, they inadvertently dismantle the single foundation holding their business together. Walking away from a position where your legal liability is exploited is not just an act of self-respect, it is an absolute legal necessity to protect your professional integrity. Personal advice. If you are currently working in a family-owned or corporate environment where your specialized licenses, hard-earned qualifications, or operational labor are exploited while an incompetent relative receives unearned praise and protection, recognize your true leverage. Do not spend years engaging in emotional arguments or begging toxic managers to recognize your value. Quietly review your legal obligations, secure your personal intellectual property, and ensure your professional licenses are fully under your own control. When toxic leaders attempt to discipline or humiliate you to appease an entitled favorite, do not argue, accept their terms, walk away cleanly, and revoke your operational support. Build your own independent success on a foundation of unshakable integrity, and let the truth dismantle those who sought to undermine you.